let's go ahead and get this session started. Welcome back, everybody. Mix view and the arrangement. That's always nice. So yeah, welcome back. Welcome back to another Manifest audio session, another Manifest session. And we're going to finish what we started. And that's a big part of my desire to walk you through these sort of 3 steps in the process of finishing this particular tune that we produced together starting a few weeks ago. And, last week we looked at, okay, you have a sketch, right? We sketched a track out. Great. Creative session done, and we got it committed to some form of rough arrangement. Session 2, we dive deep into the automation, the transitions, making sure everything is dynamically working with the arrangement and that everything is as interesting as possible within the context of what you're trying to achieve so as to keep your listeners engaged. And now that that's done, then for the final session, I come back for a dedicated mixing session, and that's what we're doing here today. Now, I leave the mixing as a dedicated session for a few reasons I explained earlier on. First of all, it's context dependent. I can't really know what I'm mixing until everything is in balance with the narrative contours of our automation and everything we looked at in our last session. And I also like to approach it with fresh ears. And I also find it economical in terms of processing power. So I can refrain from worrying about piling on too many processor-intensive mixing plugins too early on in the process, so I can keep everything running smoothly while I do creative work. And now, as the final step, I get to start exploring, adding all that kind of stuff. And, finally, I think it's crucial to just go through the process of finishing what you start, whether or not the track is going to end up being released. Every time you see yourself through this process of start to finish on any track, you're going to improve your skills. And that's the name of the game. Now, at the end of the year, only a few of the tracks you made might really stand out to you, but I guarantee that every single track you saw through to the finish line, you'll have learned a new technique or gotten more comfortable with an important tool. And all those factors will feed in to those tracks that at the end of the year really stand out to you. Okay, so we've got a bunch of tracks here, and we're going to get into those mixing techniques, those mixing plugins. But the first thing I want to do is a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of organization. And one thing that's really important for me is that the drums get mixed separately from the kick. I don't want the kick impacting any dynamics processing, such as compression or anything else that I want to apply to the percussion, the drums and whatnot. Now, in other genres, I might be less concerned about that. I might want the kick to glue together with the drums a bit more, for example, in a breakbeat style. But for this kind of house or techno where the kick is so dominant, I don't really want it to cause any unwanted pumping with the other drums. So I'm going to double click on the drum rack, and it's kind of awkward with the mixer in view because the return tracks end up taking up a lot more room than I want, and I'm going to go ahead and recolor that. Okay. What I'm trying to do here before I get distracted with track colors is extract this kick 808 thud that's generating our kick drum here. And I hope that someday Ableton will make this available from just right-clicking on the pad, but for now you have to open the chain view. And from there you can right-click the drum rack chain and click this extract chain. So it's a context menu, command or control click. For me, it's a 2-finger tap. And I'm going to extract that to a new chain, and I'm going to rename it with the # to ensure the track number is there. Kick. Okay, great. And having done that, it retains all of the same clips. So all the clips with the kick are also in there. They're kind of named confusingly the same as the other drums, but now I've got it on a separate channel for processing, and it's probably going to be quite loud because my other tracks are down at -7, but let's just take a listen. And yeah, there it is. It's a little bit dominant, as I feared, but that's easily remedied with a little volume adjustment. And I think I'm just going to change the color and assign that to the clips. And yeah, we'll leave these for now. You know, I don't want to waste time renaming everything, but there we go. The kicks are separated. So that's a first bit of housekeeping. And now I like to also get my percussion together. So I'm going to drag that congas track up. I'm going to rename this kit. So I've got my drum kit and my conga loop that comes in later. Okay. And there's the bass. And the keys are the main mid-range element. We have these leads that come in later. I'll just rename them leads because I'll probably mix those slightly separately. But then the pads and the effects, the little dub noises we created from our free DFX free rack, those, yeah, I will group. So I'm going to group these two drum rack or drum and percussion tracks aside from the kick. So just select them both and give it a little Command G, and I'll rename that percussion. And there we go. And now I'm going to similarly group the pads and the effects and rename those atmosphere. That's all my atmospheric stuff, right? And yeah, so now I've got things organized more or less how I want. Just leave the lottery in there for later. There will be yet another giveaway for one lucky viewer tuned in. Okay, so why have I done that? Well, I'm gonna start with some individual track processing, but I'm gonna do some bus processing as well. And this sort of track grouping will keep things organized. Furthermore, yeah, now I'm down to basically 6 different channels that I can blend together in terms of bus processing. And, you know, I like to approach this with a philosophy, and that philosophy is a sort of conflict resolution approach that I've described in some of my tutorials and lectures that I've given, and I call it the 4-dimensional mixing framework. So, you know, as any of you who have looked at production videos on YouTube have surely found, there's a vast abundance of tutorials talking about advanced mix techniques, frequency unmasking, sidechain compression, but they're being discussed in isolation. And for me, it's important to have a framework of, okay, when would I want to use frequency unmasking? When would I want to use the sidechain compression? And so my approach here is to plot all of my sounds in a sort of 4-dimensional framework. And this 4-dimensional framework, it sounds fancy, it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's dead simple. We also live in a 4-dimensional continuum, and so does music, right? So we can plot every sound as existing within a correlate of 3 dimensions, right? We've got this language embedded in how we describe sound already. So it's not even a leap, and it doesn't require you to learn any new jargon. It's just transposing language we already have. So for example, the first dimension would be distance from the listener, perceptual distance, and that, you can use reverb and fancy effects to create even more of a sense of distance, but at its most basic, this dimension of proximity is controlled by volume. If a sound is really loud, we describe it as upfront or in your face. And if it's quiet, we might describe it as distance. So that's our Z axis. Our Y axis is the stereo spectrum. Is it left or right? So already each sound is plotted on these two coordinates. The third coordinate, already described in how we speak about frequency, is of course frequency itself. So we talk about low frequencies and we perceive them as lower down, high frequencies perceived as higher up, whether that's due to an innate neurological phenomenon or simply by virtue of the fact that subs are placed below tweeters and low frequencies travel through the earth while high frequencies dissipate in the air more quickly is up for debate. But every sound occupies this sort of set of coordinates. Every sound possesses a certain amplitude. It possesses a certain location in the stereo spectrum, which could be right down the middle if it's mono, but it's there. It exists in that spectrum, and then it exists within a frequency range as well, right? But of course, I described 4 dimensions, the fourth being time, right? And because we're not mix engineers, because we're producers, we can adjust where things are in time. And why is that important? Well, because every technique I'm going to walk through today is going to be based on analyzing sounds within this 4-dimensional framework to identify conflicts, because just like in our 4-dimensional continuum that we inhabit, if there are 2 objects trying to occupy the same place at the same time, there's a conflict that must be resolved. And we can use this approach in analyzing the sounds in our mix to determine which techniques could be most appropriate for resolving those conflicts. So think about sidechain compression. Why do we use it? Aside from creating a pumping effect as an aesthetic thing, the reason it's used technically, right, is because there's a conflict usually in the low end, and we'll look at that in a moment, to apply a sidechain to the bass so it's not conflicting with the kick. But I just used the word conflict. It's conflicting with the kick. That's why we use these techniques. And you can also look at addressing the frequency spectrum in other ways beyond just EQ. We can look at repitching some elements, which I might do today as well. But okay, so let's make sure that our kicks and our bass are not conflicting, because that low-end, low-frequency real estate is incredibly valuable, and there's only so much energy available to produce it. And so we don't want my operator house bass struggling to be heard over the kick, or vice versa. So, I could just do a blanket sidechain, but I'm going to show you a tool I created. It's included in one of our live toolkits. I believe it's the dual path bass tool, and I think I added a little extra sauce on it. Yeah, okay, so what does that mean? There's some extra effects we don't need to worry about. The main point is that I've got this crossover here between the frequencies above and below this crossover. And now, below that crossover is where I can select a sidechain source. So that means that only the sub-frequencies are going to be sidechained in this way, preventing any unwanted, obvious sidechain pumping artifacts from appearing and potentially distracting the listener in the higher frequencies, which will remain unimpacted by this sidechain compression. So here I am. The key thing is I put this rack on, whoops, the percussion for some reason. Let's move it to the bass. There we go. I want it on the bass. And now that it's there, the bass is going to get sidechained from the kick, right? And I've got some basic settings here, and they're mapped to macros. But the crucial thing is that this sidechain is only going to be applied below that crossover frequency. So let's just check that out real quick. And it might not be such a big deal. I think I want to go to this V2 one where it's a little more busy. And I'll just loop that area, Command L. Okay, so let me turn this off for a moment. And it's pretty subtle, and if you're not in headphones, you might not hear it, but I can definitely notice when it's off, there's a bunch of release time on the bass that's continuing a little longer than I want, which I could adjust in Operator, sure, but this is really tightening it up so it plays a lot more nicely with the kick. Now, I think I might just dial that down a little bit further. And yeah, it's pretty strong threshold and ratio settings. But I'm seeing the kick is really got a noticeable sort of dip in the middle there. So I might actually, yeah, okay, we can actually see that dip in the waveform in the side chain. Isn't that funny? Well, that's how it works. Maybe I'll, no, leave the hold where it was. Tighten the decay slightly. Okay, cool. Oh, SO, that's awesome. That's great feedback. Thank you. That's great to see. Okay, so those are playing together a little better, but you know, with the 4D framework I described, I have to apologize because that way of thinking is already so embedded in my production innately that there might not be so many conflicts there, because as I do a shift-click multi-selection on, can I do just the kick and the bass? Yes. You'll notice that the way I've written the bass line, yeah, for sure some release time from the bass will overlap with the kick, but the actual notes of the bass are already playing in between the kick. So I've already kind of preemptively ensured that potential conflicts are minimized just by staggering them in time. And that's one of the solutions to conflict. The 4D framework, giving you that fourth dimension of time, makes evident and available to you as time-based solutions to mixing. You can avoid all kinds of mixing headaches by just moving notes around. Listen, it's not going to always work. It's not going to always make sense or achieve your aims, but it's an option. It's an option you can explore before resorting to, processor-intensive plugins and the like. Now, in my view, it also creates maybe a slightly more interesting syncopated feel, but it also reduces somewhat arguably the need for this sort of compression. But I do enjoy the fact that the sidechain is only applied to the low ends. We're not hearing pumping artifacts on the top end. So for example, if I just option drag this out and deactivate that one, it sounds, how do you say, not good. It's really taking away a lot of the character in the higher frequencies, and it's removing a lot of the transient impact that makes this sort of organ bass worthwhile. So I'm going to just get rid of that and quickly explore some of these additional sort of coloring options. The splatter, I guess, is a short delay. And so, yeah, the way I thought about this was that the chorus applies widening to the frequencies above which the sidechain is applied to. So that means that we can apply widening only to frequencies above the crossover, and therefore that will not muddy a nice tight mono low end. So I don't know if this sort of chorus is really necessary, but it's kind of giving it some character. Yeah, I'll leave it nice and tight for now. Okay, so just also while I'm focused on the kick and the bass, let's go ahead and add some processing to the kicks here. I think no compression is needed, right? Like it's a MIDI clip and every kick note is the same velocity. So there's no variance in volume that needs to be addressed with dynamic processing. And it could take the life out of it a little bit, although it might also, now that I mention it, help address some of that weird dip we were seeing there in the side chain. But you know what? I could also just reduce the threshold. Okay, what I really want to do is just apply some very basic EQ on the kick. Some EQ, and yeah, I think I'll just stick with EQ for now. Let's just grab an EQ8, good old go-to. And I'm going to add this second band here around 111 Hertz. I might bring it down slightly. So that's going to give some punch. And then I think I also want another band up here. Just to give it a little more click. And then, you know, I think I'm going to swap band 4 for band 2. It was, wait, what was it? 115. Because I want band 2 to reduce that peak that I'm seeing here. I'm going to turn up the Q so it's a little more specific. I don't want to completely get rid of it, but I feel like this protrusion I'm looking at here could be problematic later in the mix. And yeah, I do have this steep high pass all the way down at 10 Hertz below the threshold of hearing. Just on bigger sound systems, that can help prevent the sound system from straining. But a lot of front of house engineers will have those frequencies already removed. Okay. Yeah, and then on the bass, there's already some saturation inflating both paths, and so then maybe also just a little EQ8 action here. So we've got, yeah, just want to give it a little more warmth. Up in the tonal register there. Just a slight little boost. And I might do a, whoops, not on 2. I keep going one bell ahead here. Bells ahead. Okay, there we go. Just to get the deep sub frequency. You know what? I think I want to leave those in. So you're getting a sense of how much of sort of improvisational, semi-intuitive processes can be. I'll just roll off some of those extreme highs with a more gentle low pass. Okay. The main thing here, the main important thing now with these two elements, right, is I like to think of the mixing process, you know, the entire production process. It's got all kinds of metaphors. I was talking about, you know, painting or whatever. Well, now with the mix, it's kind of like cooking in this way where I want to make a nice, delicious sonic meal for you, and I've only got one pot. It all has to fit in that one pot. There's only so much volume. There's only so much headroom available. And within that pot, I want to make sure that the different tasty ingredients are in the correct proportion to one another, or else it's not so tasty anymore, right? So I like to just make sure right off the bat that as I mute all the other tracks here, that the kick and the bass together are not coming in too hot. So let's go back to our little loop zone. Should make it even shorter. And just going to use this. And I can see those higher notes on the bass are coming in a bit louder than the others. So I wonder, of course I could apply compression to address this, but what if I just do this in the MIDI domain? So I'm going to select all those high notes, not that hard. They're all pretty clearly separated from the lower ones. And just drag their velocities down. Right? It's kind of sitting a little better. I don't know why some of them had higher velocity. Maybe I played them in like that. So MIDI is your friend in the mixing process too. Especially, well, obviously if you're still working with MIDI. But yeah, before resorting to compression to address dynamics, maybe just take a look at your velocities first, because that seems to have helped significantly. Okay, so I think I still want the bass overall to just come down a bit. Yeah, -2 or so, and maybe the bass can come up slightly. And so yeah, -7 is great. That's really what I'm looking for, that the kick and the bass are leaving at least 6 decibels of headroom to fit the other stuff in around it. So I'm pretty happy with the low end. I don't think I need to worry about too much more treatment. I'm going to come to the rest of the percussion later. We're going to look at some other fancy techniques and get a little creative when it comes to time for the percussion. But let's move our little mix loop. Oh, hey, yeah, of course, some of you are probably pulling your hair out, wanting to scream at me. The issue that obviously arises here with my all too clever velocity solution is that it has to be added to the remainder of the track. Very true. I'll leave the automation visible just to illustrate, you know, why I like to leave the automation lock on. Because, for example, I'm going to go ahead and copy this V2 instance of the clip and put that there. And see, I don't want to move the velocity around with it, right? Okay, so now I have to do a little bit more work here to get these all straightened out. Bear with me, but I'll show you that it's not so complicated a process. Just make sure it's pasted in the correct juncture. Okay, so now I believe this will have been all the V2s with the exclusion of a little pre-change up there. Okay. Devil's in the details. And now I have to do this to the V1, which be most easily done here. Okay. There's all my high notes. Bring them down so they don't peak any higher than the others. Okay, nice, and that should replicate throughout the entire looping segment there. And then we have to, of course, copy that just a couple of times. And yeah, let me just get rid of that and drag that there. Sweet. And we're almost done with this velocity copying rampage. And look at that. I think we're all set. Okay. Yeah, cool. Still saves me the trouble of compressing stuff. So now let's go to where the keys are pretty busy. This key's 3. And I'm going to add the keys back in without any of the other higher end layers. Let's just take a listen and go to where the loop is. Let's go ahead and rewind. Okay. Actually, I want to do it here because the keys and the busy bass are together. Okay, so this has some modulation with a filter frequency and all that kind of thing. I think, yeah, let's go back to my mixing category, and it's already got the spread on there automated. Yeah, so I'm gonna try this EQ strip vintage. And sometimes it's nice to not have the visualization. And I want to just keep some warmth, but remove some of this low frequencies here with the low cut. So basically what I've got is 2 sweepable mids, meaning that I can move the frequency around with this gain. And another high mid. And maybe I'll just adjust the filter here so it stops automating it. And open it up so I can hear it with the, yeah. I want some of that noise to come through, so maybe I'll just give it a little high shelf. It's pretty subtle. But yeah, I'm gonna bring this low cut up to around that same cutoff frequency. I think it was 123. I still want them to be warm, as I said, so give it a slight low mid boost. The high mids, maybe I don't want them to, well, you know what? They're not obnoxious yet. I think we're gonna want to play with some chorus on here maybe as well. So yeah, let's just go ahead and grab our good old chorus ensemble. Put it before the EQ. Maybe ensemble. Get the filter sweeps going again. I want it pretty subtle. Now I know that Kev had asked earlier about widening sounds, and I want to experiment with one of these tools here that I created. It's just you know, another live rack available in our toolkit bundle, and it's this mid-side divider. So whoa, I don't need the multi-band version. I think I'll just go for the Mid-side, there we go. Just straight up mid-side divider. So now I've got one chain for the mids, and let's solo the keys. So that's the mid signal, meaning just the mono information. And here's the side information. So now I can look at adding some grit just to the side, right? What if I put the chorus just on the mids? And I think, again, I want this before the EQ strip. And on the sides, let's go ahead and grab something nice and crunchy. Pedal might be too strong. I think I'll just go for an overdrive on the side. So yeah, it can be really good to like get these like nice and extreme and then dial it way back and then just slightly introduce some harmonic inflation on the side signal there. Yeah, I'm not sure how appropriate that is, but one other trick that I like to use is, yeah, I think I'm going to forget about that for now. We'll come back to the mid-side stuff perhaps later on. Oh, hey, what if we put a phaser just on the side? There we go. That's fun. Nice. So, yeah, we're going to look at some other signal separation tools I've created, but this might be something I want to dry wet blend later on. I do also, you know, with all the filter frequency modulation, think that before all this fancy EQ and whatnot happens, it would probably be good to just grab a gentle bit of compression. Okay, make sure we catch those peaks. Give it a nice long attack time so those transients have a chance to express themselves. And that ratio seems a little high. It's not doing much performance-wise. I think I need to... Yeah, actually, it's quite good. I can see... Okay, something like that is working. And then, last but not least, you might have noticed a lot of my devices I like to have a saturator, and my default saturator is set by default to the sinoid fold. And this just harmonically inflates whatever the signal might be. No drive, no clip, no color, just sinoid fold. And it's like night and day. But, of course, there's some gain compensation. Now it's filling up that pot, right? So I might need to just bring the overall track volume down. But the reason I made sure the kick and the bass were giving me that 7 dB of headroom is because I want the main mid part to have room to cut through. I think I might need more compression on there with all the modulation going on. Yeah. Oh yeah, we gotta get the makeup gain going. Dial the ratio back. Yes, never mind. The makeup gain was a mistake. Just leave it down there. Okay. I like to bring the percussion in last because, you know, if you bring it in too soon, it can just take precedence over elements that it shouldn't take precedence over, and can be dominating the mix in a way that it needn't. So okay, next up is our leads here. And I think I want to explore yeah, let's just do stereo divider, no. I think actually let's demystify this process a little bit. And I'll go ahead and just add 2 EQ8s to a rack. So here's what I like to do. Go ahead and map this to macro 1. Okay? Because it's already mapped, then when I duplicate this chain, Command D, this one is already mapped as well, right? They're both already mapped. And then this one, I'm going to flip that to a steep low pass. And now this macro already mapped is a crossover controlling both bands simultaneously. And what I want to do, yeah, 2 bands is fine here. I don't think I need more than that. So I'm going to call this top. I'm going to call this mids. And I'm going to go ahead and drop a gentle high pass on there as well. That doesn't need to be crossovered here, which I will rename. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do is get some auto panning at different rates in the different frequency bands. So I'm going to drop an auto pan on both of these. Yeah, so now just on the mids, just solo that band quickly. Okay, I need to open the crossover up. So field. Let's hear them together. And let's make sure these are different rates. Okay, and I might want to automate the amounts and rates changing over time. Yeah, let's just quickly do that. Map to amount, map to rate, and then I'm going to map these to the same ones, but I'm going to make sure their ranges are different in the macro mapping browser. So as I click here, I want the mids to remain slower, so they can go down to around there, but their ceiling should be, yeah, around 2 hertz maybe, just guessing. And the tops, I don't want to ever go below, say, 0.74, and they can go a lot higher, let's say. Yeah, that seems good. So now as I adjust this frequency, right? And then, yeah, I think that's enough. We've got all those send effects in there. We've already automated other stuff. So, okay, cool. And then again, these are things that I can just gradually change over the course of our track here. For example, increasing the amount from like a subtle degree of auto pan to more extreme stereo activity towards the end. And I think I want the frequency to dynamically increase and then go back down a bit. And I'm just kind of guessing with those. But let's get to some frequency modulation here. Some, just some kind of vintage channel strip ought to do the trick. And there we go. Drop the lows. Get a little brightness in the high mids, maybe even a high shelf. And then, yeah, there's a tube amount in there. Could give it some character. Cool. And then the cabinet amount. I'm not going to mess with that. Yeah, the tube's causing a little bit of peakage there that I'm not sure about. Okay, let's revisit our faders. Yeah. Yeah, I think I need some gentle peak reduction compression. And there are varying philosophies on this, but I like to apply my compression prior to the EQ because I feel like the compressor is more likely to undo the EQ than the EQ undoing the compression. So that's a little more tame, just getting things in a more controllable volume range. I think I might actually increase the ratio. Okay, cool. Let's go to the atmospheres, and then it's percussion time, and a little overall mix treatment. Okay. So yeah, what do we have here? I'm going to open the group up, and yeah. So we got the pads, which are. Got this modulation, reverb, a little bit of errata on there with the disruption being modulated. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my mixing folder. Let's try this EQ strip modern. And just get rid of some lows here. And I don't want to really disrupt the crackly stuff there. I could maybe even... No, I don't want to boost it too much. Yeah, nice and warm. This is just the pads we're dealing with here. Yeah, let's give it a little low mid gain. Wow, just make it an ambient track. Okay, I don't want to get lost in the sauce here. Let's go to our effects dubs. This already just has this really steep EQ8 on there. I don't want to saturate it because I'm afraid that's going to make the mix more complicated. But I think I do want that a bit higher. Seems like a good number. Okay. And then on the overall group track, oh no, I don't want any high boost on there. It's too much. It's too much. I think I'm going to dial the dry wet back even on the errata. And let's try this analog path. No, we don't need that on here. Tube, glue, I haven't used that one in a while. Let's just go for this this channel strip. So it's got basic, high pass, low pass, width. And yeah, I'll enhance the stereo width here. Maybe some low pass will help with the errata getting too intense there. I think the saturator should come down a bit. Okay. Things are filling up a lot, hey? I'm looking at the peak level here. It's nice and dynamic. It's okay that there's peaks, so I might bring everything down together in volume at some point. But I think that's okay for the atmosphere. All right, it's time for the percussion. I'm gonna drop the volume all the way down, unmute it, and fade it in till what seems like an appropriate level in relation to all these core musical components that are arguably far more vital. Okay, it seems good. It did need to be at 0. And I think there's a couple things I want to change pitch-wise here. Not a lot of arguments going on, not a lot of conflicts with the 4D stuff that are jumping out at me. The keys are sort of riding in that low mid. The leads are in sort of the next segment of the frequency spectrum, and nice and wide with all that movement we applied. And then the pads, the atmospheres are nice and diffuse, although, yeah, let's try and widen them even more. Do I need a multi-band widener? Yeah, why not? Oh, you know what? I already got the width here in the channel strip. What am I doing? Okay, percussion time. So let's advance our loop to where the congas are playing as well. Now, one important caveat I neglected to mention is I'm obviously mixing in headphones, so not the optimal monitoring situation, but yeah, I'm sort of realizing maybe the leads are a little loud now. And one thing that'll help boost the percussion a little bit is well, I've got my drum strip here. And now I have to re-blend them. So, yeah, we've got some saturation with a sinoid fold, a gentle drum bus in there, and I'm going to add some low cut just to ensure the very lowest frequencies aren't in conflict with the kick or subs at any time. And yeah, we probably need to pan the drums a little bit here. So the higher the frequencies are, the more comfortable I am panning them a little further. And I think these are sort of in conversation. In fact, I think we even created them with a converser, so it makes sense they'd be panned opposite. And then let's see. Yeah, the clap could be down the middle. And these 808 hats I think I want to modulate the panning with one of our random modulators. We go ahead and grab a little manual sample and hold. No, not the manual. What am I doing? MIDI sample and hold. Just use the free version for now that comes with Mod Squad free. Now it's way too much modulation, so I'll just narrow that range. And seems like it could use a little slew. So it's changing values a little more smoothly. There we go. So every MIDI note is going to trigger a gradual panning just on the open hat. Okay, so I said I wanted to do some pitch stuff here. I think, first of all, this rim needs to come down an octave. And in doing so, would likely also benefit from a little more low pass with a bit of resonance. Okay. Can't remember what I did with the 8-bit. Okay, so let's, be cool to get some kind of modulation on there as well, but I want to just focus on the mix. It's not going to make that much difference at the end of the day, and that's part of the mixing process. It's very easy to zoom way in and focus on these elements that are interesting to you, and I'm very guilty of this myself, but that at the end of the day are not going to move the needle for most listeners. So I'm just going to maybe leave that as is, maybe a little filter on there. Be real funny to do like a comedy version of one of these live streams, mixing in 90 minutes, and I'm just messing with a snare the entire time. 90 minutes of messing with a snare. We've all been there. Okay. How to mess with a snare in 90 minutes. I don't think anyone wants to watch that. The claps also kind of high pitched. I think I deliberately transpose those up, but shift arrow down. Okay. Oh, it's a high-pass filter. Silly me. Wonder if we move the start. What was it before? 0.7? Yeah, maybe that's too low, but it was too tinny before, so something like this is good. And I think it's time maybe to explore a little bit of is that a room? Yeah, let's get our room reverb on the whole percussion. Nice. One thing I like to do with the room is, yeah, keep that stereo all the way down. Reduce the size. Okay. What's going on with our little congas? Okay, so yeah, I've already got an EQ on there I can play with. We're almost there. We're getting towards almost master channel attention. But I want to explore a fun tool. It's going to allow us to process different layers of the congas differently. And that would be our X divide. So this comes with X effects, and it allows us to split the signal between basically the signal that's below this threshold of 30 decibels or above. So now it's kind of like a transient processor. But rather than just allowing us to emphasize the transients with the gain, we can also pan them separately. And I think that's one thing I want to do here is to impose some stereo width on these congas by moving these different segments of the audio signal that are divided here to different sections. Now I could rack this up as well and just apply some processing to, say, the below segment. In fact, you know, instead of just talking about it, why don't I do that? So here we go. I've got the X divide with the settings already in place. So I'll duplicate that. And then this top one, I'll mute the below. And this bottom one, I'll mute the above. And now that means I can go to the below. And let's go ahead and add something interesting. Like some resonators or something. Okay, D? Yeah, D minor, right? Okay. Now, we can also split them by crossover, but we've already kind of looked at doing that today. I'm going to leave it with this amplitude differential. I don't know if that's really an important part of the mix here, but it's just something fun I thought might be interesting to look at. Let's see how that tonality impacts. Right? And so now we can put some kind of short delay just on the top transients. Give it some more width. Might be making it a little too messy, but okay. We've gotten into that dangerous territory where I just described I'm obsessing over small details here. But I think the congas are standing out a little more, doing a little more interesting work. Okay. Oopsie. Thought that was the congas which I just collapsed. All right, how are we doing, gang? Any questions about anything I looked at or the purpose of any of it before we move into our final mix bus treatment? Okay, let me take a breather, give my ears a rest, wet my whistle, and move along here. So I've got Global Hub as part of my my default template, and little known fact, it's got a limiter built inside it. This little L is our limiter toggle, just a safety limiter as I call it. I wouldn't use it for mix processing, so at this point you might want to bypass it. But it ensures that, you know, you're not going to blow out your speakers or your ears, or you shouldn't, or you run a lower risk at least. But anyway, I have this mix scoper here that I thought we could look at. It's been recently revamped. Can you all see the pop-out window that just opened? Or is that invisible on the stream? Actually, maybe I can verify myself here. Yeah, let's see. Well, the whole purpose of the mix scoper is there's this theory that the frequency response curve of pink noise very closely mimics that of human hearing. And so thereby, we can use pink noise as a map for the appropriate frequency levels of the different elements in our mix. And yeah, so we can enable the pink noise audibly here, which I can bring up, but we don't hear it because the transport isn't running. And there's no need to hear pink noise if we can't hear the mix. The purpose of it is to provide a frequency reference. Now, I didn't... Okay, good. I can see the pop-up is there. So this pop-up is new. This wasn't always there with Mixscoper before. You just click on the visualizer to open it. And now... yeah, so let's just take a listen. And so it's providing a visual reference of that pink noise. We can freeze it. We can freeze our output as well. We can also slow the interval of both of these down. We'll make it way faster. But we can also turn up the volume on the pink noise. And so people would use that as a reference to mix the different elements in. And I can see that we're matching it pretty well with, of course, the mix signal being the blue and the pink noise being, well, pink. And so, you know, it's a breakdown right now, so we don't have the bass. But let's go zoom ahead, and like, if I'm just guessing averages, there's some peaks of the blue coming up a little bit higher in the bass. So I might just bring the bass down, oh, I don't know, a couple decibels. Now this isn't something to be over-relied on, but because I'm just listening in headphones, these visual references are a useful, you know, accompaniment. I think the high end's looking pretty good. Yeah, those hi-hats, they're going up to the level of the pick noise, maybe slightly higher. Those keys are definitely peaking a little bit at some points, but that's okay. It's a general reference. Now, in terms of mix processing here, I've got this man-made mastering pre-master tool I made in cahoots with Tim Xavier and the other fine folks at Man-Made Mastering in Berlin. And oops, I just disappeared it. Let's bring it here. And basically we've got some saturation, harmonic drive. We've got a spectrum to visualize it. And we can A/B different settings. So there's two different racks, and I can experiment with different settings. For example, on side A, I think there's a little too much drive on this stuff. But I'll bring up the air band and increase the frequency at which mono will be applied. And then we can compare that to channel B, which yeah, I'll have to make this available again. I think I should modernize this pre-master tool and confer with the good folks over at Man-Made and yeah, get that figured out. While we're looking at referencing, I might as well yeah, okay. Before I get into the extra referencing stuff, I was just about to discuss. I'm just thinking here, yeah, let's try some glue amount on this channel B. Just a little glue compression. And it should be emphasized that this is not meant to be a mastering tool, it's a pre-mastering tool. So you still want to ensure all your levels are nice and dynamic. And to ensure that's the case, I'm just going to go ahead and select all of my tracks. And with them selected, if I bring the volume down, I can bring them all down together. I'm trying to buy myself a little more headroom here while maintaining the relative volumes. And now we're still getting some peaks, but it's not pushing up against the limiter the way it was before. Okay. So it's definitely providing some inflation, and we've got the mono bass, got the air band on there, opening things up in the higher frequencies, just at the very top end of the frequency spectrum. And yeah, let's go ahead and glue it a little bit together. So, of course, that's using a whole sequence of effects that are included in here. So yeah, having revisited this now, I think it's time for a refresh on that. I'll make it available soon. Probably as a free effect, and I'm still relatively happy with the pick noise overlay. However, it seems the leads could also come down. Where's that the claps? It's not the leads, it's the claps. We'll go deal with that at the source. There we go. Okay, it's a little better. All right, so in terms of new visualizer stuff, we've also got a new floating time counter. So it's always showing minutes and seconds where you are in your track. And this has nothing to do with mixing, but it's got a little alarm I built in here. And that's for if you were doing a live set and it's only 1 hour, so this is hours and this is minutes. If the alarm is set to 55 minutes, it'll start flashing at you when it crosses the 55-minute mark to let you know, hey, your set is ending soon. Let's just demonstrate that with, let's set it to 4 minutes and run this back to around here and take a look. And of course, this time zone is included in Utility Boost. And there we go, 4 minutes, and it's flashing at you. Okay, I just thought that was fun to see while I'm on the topic of showing all the new Utility Boost pop-outs that I haven't really showed off. So we got the pop-out on Mix Scoper, and now also in the Sound Scoper as well. Same thing, click here to expand the oscilloscope, and we can switch it into sonogram mode as well. So these are all included with Utility Boost, which comes bundled with all our paid Max devices. Some useful monitoring tools. And yeah, just the whole purpose of time zone, to explain what it does, is it's a way of calculating any possible BPM time or division in milliseconds. So if I want to know the time of 3 eighth notes divided by 5, and then there we go, 151 milliseconds. And we could do any kind of division and multiple of any metrical rate, and then also multiply it by a percentage. So a seventh of a quarter note triplet at 119 BPM, of course, is 48 milliseconds. And there's other fun stuff you can do, transposing the BPM, Live's BPM. So if we assume 120 is the bass, is 0 semitones, then we can sort of tune them. Anyway, I should show that in a more sensible context than at the end of a mixing session, but thank you all for tuning in. We got a mix done. I have to double check it without the headphones, but I'm feeling pretty confident about it. Is there any feedback on the mix or any questions or anything that anybody needs to see covered before we get into our lottery giveaway, as has become the ritual of sorts with these live streams? One lucky winner on guessing the correct number that you'll all post in the chat is going to win our live toolkit bundle today. So that's going to include a lot of the racks that I was demonstrating and using in this mixing session. Now, I think rule of thumb, a 90-minute creative session to make the track a few weeks ago. That's great. In 90 minutes, rough sketch, done. Another 90-minute session we did together, automating, refining, working on the transitions. Great. 3 hours of work. And now, one last separate dedicated mixing session, another 90 minutes or so. Yeah, brings me to roughly, let's say, 5 hours of work on this track. I'm not saying that you need to aim for that or you shouldn't spend more time, but maybe sometimes it can be a useful creative practice to give yourself a time limit for working on a track, because sometimes there are tracks that really do warrant, 20, 30 hours of labor. Other times you need to just go through the process, get comfortable with all the steps of the process as I described, with all the stages feeding into your eventual workflow. And then it can also just be good to get in the practice of not getting overly attached to these minutiae, these details that, as I mentioned earlier, are not going to really necessarily be evident to the vast majority of listeners. And so setting yourself that time cap creates a sense of urgency that might help you avoid getting stuck on elements that maybe you needn't really focus on. Hopefully that all makes sense. So, I don't see any questions popping up in the chat. So let's go ahead and move over to our lottery. And I'm going to set the range to, how many people are in there? Let's make it a narrower range this time, okay? So let's just set it to 50. So everyone who wants a chance to win our live toolkit bundle should enter a number in the chat right now between 0 and 50, okay? Enter a number between 0 and 50, and then I'm going to generate a random number in that range, and whoever's closest to the number generated is going to win our live toolkit bundle. So go ahead and get your numbers typed in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and run it. So I managed to avoid having to deal with any significant mix conflicts by having already had, the kick and the bass staggered on different notes interacting rhythmically. Using something like Converser would ensure that the two different MIDI notes are not arguing with each other, because they're always going to play on different MIDI note intervals. You can also move entire segments of your track around. So if you have some keys that really need to be in the mid-range and pads that also really need to be in the mid-range, and they're conflicting, well, maybe they don't need to happen at the same part of the track. If they are, maybe you can adjust the octave of one or the other to get them out of each other's way. And if that doesn't work, then yes, by all means, explore some side chaining, some frequency unmasking. But in this case, it wasn't really necessary, because the kick and bass, we coordinated in such a way with the dual path bass tool included in the live toolkit bundle to ensure we were only side chaining the lower frequencies and not imposing any side chain artifacts on the higher frequencies. And we went ahead and put the keys and the leads in slightly separate frequency ranges. So the keys are a little more in the low mids, and the leads are a little higher up in the frequency spectrum. And the atmospherics are doing just that. They're hanging out in the wide stereo field, kind of hovering in the background, not trying to really dominate so much as just add some texture, add some background to our story. No guesses for the lottery? I'm not seeing any numbers. Nobody interested in the toolkit. Well, that's okay. I suppose we don't have to run it, but I can't run it if you don't type your numbers in. So we'll do a firm cutoff in 6 minutes if nobody's typed in. And I'll just get the track going here to listen to the fruits of our labor, as it were, while while I wait for the numbers. Hey, Matt Ricks with a 26. It rhymes. I like it. Anybody else? Anybody else with a number? Or are we just going to let Matt win it by default? I think need to just tame some of that mid-side stuff there on the Okay, get your numbers in. I'm going to run it in 2 minutes. And Matt's the only one with a number in. Listening back now, I think those open hats are a little dominant. Matt, you already have the toolkit? Well, I tell you what, if that's the case, we'll make other arrangements. I'll reallocate. There we go. Hi-hats seem to be fitting in a little better. I think the airband boost on the Triple M pre-master tool might have. Eli, okay, what are you guessing? So, you're guessing a number between 0 and 50. We're going to generate a random number between 0 and 50, and whoever has typed the closest number in the chat will win. So the number is generated randomly, but you need to type your guess between 0 and 50 into the chat. Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious how this sounds through non-headphones. Curious how it sounds over there. So that's the interesting thing, you know, like I had the keys going up in pitch with that macro rack. All right, we got a 45 from Eli. He's trending high. Might be down to Matt and Eli if no one else gets it in. But what I was thinking is that when those pitches get higher, it gets quite a bit louder, doesn't it? So maybe, cheers. Yeah, maybe what could be cool would be if I would have, for example, had a velocity effect here. And then what I would do is, right, that pitch was mapped to the octave reverb, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to map this out high also to the octave reverb and then play around with the ranges. So that out high is 127, but when the octave goes up, it's going to go down to 77. So awesome. That's great to hear, everybody. Sasha with a 13. Okay, sweet. That's enough to run a proper lottery here. All right. So let me just see in that moment where the keys are really jumping out. Yeah, I think I can just see here the octave reverb. Yes, it's working so much better. It's almost maybe a little too much. So have the velocity come down to like 90, right? So clever velocity control can avoid a lot of unnecessary compression headaches because remember, velocity is usually going to be controlling the volume of your instrument, depending how it's programmed and configured. And therefore, so the problem was that bringing the octave up, they got really loud. And by mapping this output high velocity from the velocity MIDI effect to that octave reverb in an inverse direction, so it resides at 127 when it's at minimum, and then as it goes up to maximum, we pull it down to around 85. That has the effect of making those higher notes less loud and less obnoxious and less of a mixing problem. Not to say that compression isn't also good. I have some on there, but if I were to take care of that issue, I'd have to make it much more extreme ratio, and it could suck some of the life out of the sound.